I am Eric with Muathe.com, and I greet you, beloveds, in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. So today I'd like to do a follow-up to a video I did last week, and the video can be seen here. I'm going to link the video in the description of this very video. So I'd like to do a quick follow-up because there were a couple questions that came after that video. In that video, we were talking about the stock that had a big fall, ALLK. So this is going to be a quick follow-up. And I'm going to link this video, the previous video. So if you haven't watched a previous video, please take a moment, if you feel like doing so, to watch this previous video and then come back to this very video. So last week we saw a huge 87 to 90% gap down in this stock. So that's a very unusual, but that's what happened. We had a big drop, almost 85% plus to the downside, overnight gap down, big gap down. So the question now becomes, after this massive plunge, which by the way is one characteristic of biotech stocks, it's just every now and then you'll see something like this in the biotech space. Unfortunately, or for whatever it is, that's just how it goes sometimes with this sector of the market. By the way, I had not noticed this while recording the prior video, but even before the plunge, if you take a look at my uniformity concept, we can see that the market somehow was showing resistance before the plunge. As we can see here, we had broken this trend line, moving lower in the beginning of November. That was at about 100. And after breaking that area, so this break here, if we draw it this way, we can see that the market had already shown one resistance instance here, and then followed by this reversal lower. So this second one is as a consequence of the gap down. But even with having said that, we can see this is now a double top on this same area, which also happens to be around RSI 50 on the daily. So again, RSI 50 rejection, double top, sets the stage for where we are trading right now. So back to the question. The question is, what next? Or how long could it take for an instrument that has plunged this massively to start gaining all this lost ground? How long can it take? And of course, we can assume that we don't know for a fact, but we can look at certain things, for example. And we can see that one of the things that is going to hinder any movement higher is the concept known as overhead supply. So let me just write this here. Now this concept, as is referred to by the trading world, is a simple idea or understanding of how the mentality of traders and investors is going to be. So let's take a price level here. So lots of trading happens in this box in theory. So prices are within this box. Now, whenever you see a plunge, it means in theory, especially where we see a big gap down, like in this case for ALLK, what it means is that the majority of those who owned the stock, especially since this was a gap down, there was no way to get out before the 87% gap down. All of these people are in the negative. So we know that for a fact, based on the price before the gap down. Majority who bought the stock in this area here are down. So what happens is, every time this instrument makes an attempt to move higher, it's gonna be running into a severe type of resistance. Why? Because all of these people who bought at higher prices are looking to get out. The closer the stock gets to their purchase price, they are gonna be selling. So this is called overhead supply. There's a lot of supply by those who are right now upside down or losing money. So every time this instrument makes a little bit of a move higher, an attempt, it's going to be faced by a lot of selling, which means that the recovery is going to take a long while, in theory, based on the fact that most who are holders of this instrument are still way underwater, and they are going to be blocking any speedy recovery. So that's one thing to consider. It's just the concept of overhead supply raises a very big challenge for the stock as it attempts in the future to move back to where it was. Now, can it move back to where it was? Yes, it can. Maybe a different, fundamental moving news could change the dynamics, but generally that overhead supply is going to be a big issue going forward. So I would say it generally is going to take years, and I mean many years, for this to climb out of this position to trade in the lower 80s. It's going to take many years at best, and sometimes they never go back to where they were. That's the worst case scenario. Now, day to day, we can see that the RSI still is trading below 30.9. And because the RSI is still below 30.9, even on a day to day perspective, there is no chance of recovery as long as your RSI is below 30.9. In fact, it would make sense, generally speaking, to see prices attempt to move higher only to make fresh new lows. So that's I guess the risk is actually the current momentum still remains to the downside. If we take a look at the weekly chart, we can see another issue technically is on the weekly, the RSI is still below RSI 30.9. And because that RSI is below 30.9 on the weekly, this means that yes, it can have day-to-day moves, but generally speaking, as long as the weekly is below RSI 30.9, you're looking at an instrument with a higher probability of actually recording fresh lower lows. Why? Because the RSI is at what we know to be an extreme bearish situation. And when an instrument is trapped below RSI 30.9, the consequence is sideways to down as the main direction and experience. Now, one other observation from my vantage point, which is purely a technical standpoint, is if you take a look at the monthly chart, as I mentioned, the monthly chart also, for it to recover, the monthly RSI would have to coil back up and recover above the level of RSI 38.2. Right now, the RSI is trading at 32. Now, keep in mind, if the RSI on the monthly drifts below RSI 30.9, so if the monthly RSI drifts below RSI 30.9, then it means that for sure we are going to be making fresh lows. And there will be no immediate recovery if the RSI on the monthly also drops below 30.9. Now, back to that concept that I talked about at the beginning here, which is the overhead supply. This monthly chart shows this very well. We can see that any attempt to move higher by this instrument is going to be met by a huge, so any attempt to move higher in time is going to be met by a huge supply, which is going to be sellers coming into the market trying to get out as even as possible. So anybody who bought this in the $90 range, if it ever gets close to that price, they're going to be putting downside pressure by selling. So all of these people who are still holding from higher prices are going to be, in fact, the reason why the recovery is going to be slow and pretty much will take a long while. And sometimes the best way to do it is unfortunately, frustrate all these holders into getting out. And as time goes by and they get out of frustration, then there's going to be less overhead supply, giving the instrument, ironically, the chance now to recover after the overhead supply has been taken care of in time. I hope that makes sense. So to answer the question, how long would this take to recover? My simple answer is going to be minimum probably years, maybe 3 to 5 years will be my guess, unfortunately. Let's hope I am wrong for the sake of those who continue holding. And so it is. I am Eric with Muathe.com, and I leave you as I found you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one creator. Namaste.